Well, hello, hello, everybody. We are here again for another Other Ink Thursday. That's where I, Matthew Orr of Wet Ink Games, talk to someone else about their ink. And I am back with Tristan Zimmerman of the Molten Sulfur blog and the Molten Sulfur Press. And we're going to talk about one story from history because we're going to talk about Tristan a little bit in this episode. It's going to become evident pretty quickly why we're going to do this. Ballad Hunters is afoot, and this is some promotional efforts. Throw in the to the extent that my thumb weighs anything at all. I'm putting it on the scale here for Ballad Hunters.
Oh
Welcome back,
no,
Tristan.
but his thumb was moving in a downwards direction. Oh,
Oh no, yeah, because I'm pushing it on the scale
oh,
down,
okay, everything's
weighing down the
fine.
scale with
It's
your.
fine. Yes, Ballad Hunters live on Kickstarter. It's awesome. We'll tell you all about why it's great and why you should tell your friends. And then we'll tell you about the Pirates of the Panama Mule Train because I
Which
know
is
that that's what you guys are after.
it's such a title that how can you resist that title? But first, Tristan, like when I talk to somebody as an interview, like we are in year three of you being a regular guest here to talk about molten sulfur topics.
God, has it been 3 years?
It is the beginning of year three
Okay, all
so
right,
two
time
full,
flies.
of. But I was thinking it, but I haven't done like an interview of you, like in the traditional sort of like what I do on the show is like, hey, tell me about like how you got into the industry and like what are some of your early successes, and now you're doing your hot new thing that we're here to talk about. I want to hear about that. Like I haven't done that with you, but I so anyway, it put me in a mind to cast my mind backwards and like how long have I known Tristan? And when
Yeah,
when did I meet Tristan? And I'm sure I met
yeah.
you in person in 2019 at with the first Gen Con that I attended. I'm sure that's when I met you in person. But I seem to recall, and memory is wibbly wobbly and the human squishy brain. Um, but I was reading Making History as like my little thing to read when I didn't have anything to do when I was there. So that means that I already knew who you were and I'd already backed one of your crowdfunding campaigns because I had the PDF on my phone at Gen Con 2019. Um, so because so obviously I had met you before that. I assumed through the IGDN or something like that, our indie game developer network that we're both a
Yeah,
part of.
definitely.
Um, your work was known to me. But my point is that like you're like I wasn't like in games much earlier than that. I must have known you the entire time I've been doing this. Is kind of the conclusion that I came to. Um,
Yeah, yeah. There's a group of us who kind of all started getting or getting active anyway at around the same time, and yeah, we're definitely in the same graduating class, as it were.
yeah, for real. Um, because I went through that whole thought process, which I've now shared with you, I thought I could go with take Making History as sort of your first, not your first book, but your first sort of like hey, I'm doing more than just a blog kind of thing. And because it's like it's this collection of historical one-shot sessions and stuff like that. And like I detect some like biography in here. And I want to use it as a way to ask you about your career and your things. So like in Making History, you have a murder mystery set at Cahokia, America's largest pre-Columbian city, and
Amazing, by the way.
North America's biggest city. But like, I mean, I know about it because I visited family in St. Louis back in the day, and so that's how I knew about it. I'm like, oh, it's a mystery set at Cahokia when it was like inhabited by native peoples, and like you used to live in St. Louis, so like that's why you probably know about it. I mean, you may know, but that's like this is the biography connection, right? You used to live
Mhm.
in St. Louis, right? So it's like, is that like what is St. Louis? Like, what's the I guess like what came first? Is St. Louis sort of where you became like into games, or is that uh
No, no. So my first foray was actually into like writing for RPGs, which is usually how I phrase it rather than making games because my career has been
yeah.
circuitous. My first foray was back in 2012. And I had just graduated from college and I was in the process of joining the Navy. And you'll notice also in making history,
Yes, yes,
there
darkened
is,
ship is definitely my next talking point. So
yeah, like
but go on.
there's a horror one shot set aboard a U.S. Navy warship. And I was joining the Navy, and the process was slow. It was much slower than I had expected, because the particular kind of sailor that I wanted to be was not in high demand at that point. So the board would keep convening, and they would just sort of say like, "Yeah, we're not going to take anybody, and try again in 3 months." And so I found myself back at home in my high school bedroom with kind of nothing to do. And instead of doing the smart, sensible choice of like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll go get a job at Subway or whatever, while I wait for, the Navy. Instead, I reached out to a buddy and said, hey, man, do you want to write a book for role-playing games together? And he said, yeah, sure, that sounds like fun. Like he had a real job, but he still found time. Great guy. And that was the GM's real world reference, which is kind of a precursor to the Molten Sulfur blog because it's a bunch of adventure sites and NPCs and adventure hooks drawn from real history, um, and all compiled in PDF form and available for sale on drive-through. It hasn't necessarily aged terrifically. It's very obviously a first work. I think the most egregious part of like that hasn't aged great is it had this was before I had learned, like, hey, maybe just don't write about people who are still alive.
Mm,
Um, because there's a write up in there of Aung San Suu Kyi,
mm.
the Nobel laureate and great hero of the Burmese pro democracy movement, um, who, we wrote about in glowing terms. And then uh, a few years after the book was published, Aung San Suu Kyi got folded into the Burmese government and became an apologist for the Rohingya genocide.
Yeah.
So anyway,
It's not
there's
a great
still
look.
a book with my name on it saying Aung San Suu Kyi, what a great person. But like,
Well,
well,
it's also got a publishing date and
yeah.
it's
So fingers
before
crossed.
the yeah, it's
And there's some other stuff in there that's like this is just very obviously somebody's first piece, and
mm,
honestly, folks have been very understanding of that fact, for which I am grateful because the internet is not always understanding.
yeah.
Um,
So you mentioned the Navy, and that was one of my other questions. And the darkened ship story, of the like you said, the haunted mystery of the empty warship, is another one of the stories that's in making history. So we're kind of doing this all at once, but
yeah,
so like the part that I couldn't easily slot in from the three mysteries that are in making history are the third one is a religious conflict aboard a Viking vessel while hunting for walrus ivory. And I'm like, I don't know as clearly where this fits in. My premise that like each of the three mysteries is somehow connected to you personally, that one fits in less clearly. So let me use that as like I want to know like why that choice of story as well, but also like clearly if you were already ready, if your first RPG thing is to write a real world history book, like using the a real world GM's reference, like you're already into this history stuff well before that. So like one of my questions is like, did games lead you to history or did history lead you to games? And it sounds like it's you were already into looking at the real
the
world
thing
before
is,
you came into games.
kind of games led me to history is the
Yeah.
thing. Like my undergrad degree is in biology. My master's is in a kind of cartography adjacent field called GIS, which is kind of the intersection of cartography, programming, and um, data analysis. So not really history stuff. And no, I attended a liberal arts college, right? And I'm really, really glad I did. It produces well-rounded human beings. I'm really grateful. And I'll shout them out, Carleton College, because Carleton gave me incredible financial aid. They paid 96% of my tuition, without which I would never have been able to attend that institution. So I will be grateful to Carleton College until the day I die for
Yeah.
giving me an amazing education at almost no cost. So thank you, Carleton. And folks out there in podcast land, like. Send your children to Carleton College. Um, but um, but yeah, but I took a couple of history or history adjacent classes in undergrad, and I really enjoyed them, but it was just, doing it for the sake of doing it. And then I had this idea for this book, and my buddy Joel, who is way more into history than I am, and like Joel is really excited about this sort of thing, and was at the time, and now of course I'm super excited about it. But like, Joel was the guy, and I was just like, oh, I had this idea, let's write about it, and so most of even though I've been doing I've inadvertently, without ever at any point sitting down and saying, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do with my career," I've become a pop history guy,
Hmm.
right? I've become somebody who writes pop history. I've become someone who writes history for a popular audience, without ever being like, "Oh, yeah, this is what I'm going to do." And
Yeah, the,
so,
the natural next step after being trained in biology.
yeah, and so the where's I going with this?
I sorry to interrupt. I was asking you about like the walrus hunting adventure and
Yeah. So I just sort of
the
fell into it, and I honestly, what a question, because making history is a collection of three one-shot adventures, each with their own dedicated, very simple system, rule system devoted, specifically to customized to that adventure. It's a wonderful book. I remain enormously proud of making history. I think it's really, really fabulous. Um, and it does not sell, right? It did not sell at the time. It does not sell now. I think that's a real shame. I think it's some of my best work, frankly. But the market wants what it wants. And I hadn't thought about like, hey, Tristan, aren't all three of these kind of autobiographical? Like, I
yeah.
did write a great deal of A Killing in Cahokia. At the time, I was still in the Navy. I had gotten back from sea. They'd sent me to an Air Force base in Southern Illinois. I wrote a great deal of A Killing in Cahokia at Cahokia, right? Like in a camp chair, um, kind of in the shadow of Monk's Mound, the giant mound that was the heart of this kind of genuine metropolis, right? I want to say around 1100 AD. I'm off by a century or two there, but Cahokia was an honest to God like metropolis. It was larger than London was at the time. Like it was a city. It had a city wall. It had dense urban environment. Like and being able to write a murder mystery set in Cahokia at its height, at Cahokia, right, where you
Yeah.
can feel the history all around you,
That's
um,
incredible. I
was
didn't know you wrote it
yeah,
at the place. That's amazing.
yeah, an amazing experience.
Hmm.
Um, and um, Norse Ivory was not intended to be autobiographical. It's so Norse Ivory is a story about heritage and faith. You play as Normans, that is kind of Frenchified ex-Vikings. These are the people who will, in the Anglo world, we tend to think of the Normans as like, oh, these are the guys who like came over into England and won at the Battle of Hastings and like took over. But before they were Frenchmen, they were Vikings. They were Vikings who got bought off by the King of France. Hey, please stop raiding France. I will give you this section of northern France if you stop raiding. And it's now called Normandy after the people who settled there, the Normans, the Northmen. Um, and by the time of Hastings, these people were thoroughly Christian, right? Deeply, deeply Christian. When they settled in Normandy, they were not. They were straight up, practicing genuine, honest to God, traditional Norse Germanic religious practices. And I thought that was the most interesting thing in the world, right? What do the grandchildren of the people who settled Normandy look like religiously? And so the game is you play as these people. You have been brought up Catholic because this is what you do if you're going to be an aristocrat in France. You raise your children to be Catholics. But you know that your grandparents, who many of whom are still alive, probably not really Catholic, not really Christian, and you are sent to go retrieve ivory. Wonderful detail during this period. I believe the game is set in 994 AD. Ivory, which we think of as like, oh, where do you get ivory? You get it from elephants. Um, because of political disagreements between Europe and the new Muslim states of the Middle East, there was no longer European access to fresh ivory, either from Africa or from Asia. So where do you get ivory? You get it from walruses, walrus tusks. And but this is also at the same time when walruses are being driven to extinction in Europe. So where is ivory coming from? It's coming from Greenland, which has been just settled. And so the party is sent to like go bring us some ivory so that we can make a cathedral or whatever. And we're going to send you to Norway, to the land of your forefathers. And you get to Norway, and it's like, oh, they don't like or respect us here because we're a bunch of, Frenchified people who practice an alien religion. And in Norway, they're like, no, we got no walruses here. Keep going west. There's this madman named Eric the Red who has settled, out in Greenland. Go talk to him. And things just kind of get weirder and stranger and more alien the farther you get from your home. And it's all, very thoroughly researched and, really grounded in real stuff. But you're playing a bunch of like late teenagers from northern France. All this stuff might as well be the far side of the moon to you. And how do you filter that, what you're seeing through your religious lens? And it's about your religious experience encountering the religion of your forefathers and really being forced to grapple with it in an alien land. And it's super fun. It's great to run. It's great to play. It's a wonderful game. And I have been, in this past year, like I've been, kind of on a religious journey of my own. And so it's like I definitely was already starting to, on that particular path when I was writing Norse Ivory. And I'm not sure to what extent that was even conscious, right? But
Mm.
like, oh no, all three adventures in making history were autobiographical and I didn't even know it.
Uh, well, I maybe this is the podcast to dig into your transforming religious understanding. So I will acknowledge it, but
Yes, yes.
and I won't ask you more on this show for that. But I want to ask you more as a friend. Maybe I will later. But like
Yeah, maybe off the mics.
for but to like I said, it was sort of a almost a comedy bit to like ask you these what's the personal connection to these things. So obviously Molten Sulfur is your thing that you may be best known for now. Um, and I assume that that came out of and the specific thing that Molten Sulfur does is kind of set up by what you've kind of talked about like kind of your ideas beforehand and then kind of having this time to write. Um, but like I can also imagine that role-playing games well, I don't know. I can imagine like the quote about the military experiences that it's like, moments of terror punctuated by or like punctuating like extreme boredom or whatever. And so I can imagine that like there's time to do there's downtime on a ship and you got a bunch of people who are like on a ship. They can't go somewhere else so they could play role-playing games. Is that a thing? Like, did you play games? Because I know
I did
games are
not.
like a big
I
thing in like shore-based bases and stuff like that. People play games, but like, is that on
I
board
did
ship?
not. I did not play RPGs on the ship. I for a variety of reasons, I didn't play RPGs on the ship. Um, uh, One of which, and a variety of reasons. One of which is I was an officer,
Hmm.
and officers are not, strictly speaking, allowed
Yeah.
to be friends with enlisted personnel, with enlisted sailors,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that really does cut down on the number of people available to you to game with.
Yeah.
And I was a junior officer. Things can, be a little more slippery. And there's certainly certain parts of the Navy where things can be a little more slippery. I was not in special operations. This chin should clarify that. But certainly there's kind of some more slippery stuff in the soft community, for example.
Yeah.
But the Navy remains very kind of, you have enlisted, you have officers,
Yeah.
and for
Yeah.
the most part, you know, no, you can't get together and roll D20s. What are you
Yeah.
talking
Yeah. Yeah.
about?
Uh,
Um, but
well,
yeah, but certainly, you know, I have been playing role playing games for a long time at this point. Role playing games
right.
are wonderful. I adore them. They are a form of artistic expression that really, really speaks to me. I love that I get together with my friends, right? The thing that I love about role playing games is I get together with my friends, people whom I love, people whom I surprise, surprise, would want to spend time with anyway, people I would want to get together with anyway. And we get together and we tell stories, and the stories that we tell are different from the story that any one of us would have told if it was just that one person telling a story, because everybody's bringing their own something to the story. And I think that's magical. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's a profoundly human experience.
Yeah. And I think the fact that I mean, obviously you have you must have, at least you write about, your group and what,
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
your, your blog posts are full of like, what I would do at my table is, but also sometimes you get like, uh, when I ran this for my table, you get those sort of like things. So like, I mean, you must have a group it seems like there's sort of like almost like and maybe it isn't or maybe it is I don't know but like it's that like you started writing the blog posts because this is what you were doing at your table anyway you were like
Yes, that was how it started. I was dating this cute girl, very very sexy lady whom I am now married to. Uh,
congratulations.
Thank you, big fan. We've been married 6 years now. Just
Nice.
wonderful, big fan of marriage. Um, and I just put out archive real world people, places, and events for RPGs, which also I didn't intend it like this, wound up looking a great deal like the Molten Sulfur blog. And I published that with an author named Haley Lundy, who's a delight to work with, just really, really great. And um, and my girlfriend at the time said, "Hey, you're always ginning up. Clearly, you enjoy doing this. You're always ginning up the stuff for the games that you're running. At the time, I was running for friends online. Now we get together in person because we're all in the same city. Um, what if you just put it out as a blog? What if you could do that as a self promotion tool, right? Oh, it won't take you very long. You're already writing the stuff up, and hey, free self promotion. And boy, did that not work. It's ballooned into this whole thing, and the actual like self promotion, like because when you do a Kickstarter, you append little like trackers to the URLs that you share,
Mm.
so you can see oh, backers came from here, backers came from there, and I don't get a lot of sales from people clicking through from my blog. I'm sure I get sales from people who have like read the blog in the past and they see the Kickstarter page or the Drive Through RPG page or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah, no, the Molten Sulfur blog guy, like he's all right, he's cool. I've read some of his stuff, like he's he does all right stuff. So I'm sure there's a fair bit of that kind of resists tracking, but like generally speaking, like no, the return on investment is not there. I continue doing it because it is a lot of fun and I enjoy doing it. But yeah, the Molten Sulfur blog, which has now been nominated for Ennies. Let me just quick check here. Oh,
I
I
mean,
no longer have how many times, so it must have been 3 times then if I stopped listing the number of years. Um, just started out as like, oh well, I'm writing stuff up for my gaming group anyway. And then, I was sharing the posts on Reddit, and some posts would get more traction than others. And generally it was the stuff that was like, oh, and then I researched this thing, and like, let me tell you about what I found in my research. And that was the stuff that got traction. And so then I started, and after a year or two of the blog, it was all here's stuff that I researched. And the rest is, I suppose, history.
Hey. Uh, um, right. And I mean, it's hard to track, right? Like you talk about like you can track the tracker, nobody clicked through for your link or whatever. But like if you didn't have this huge body of work that you could point to, would the flag bearer games people have been talking to you about doing what you're doing for them right now? Like
At a
it,
minimum, I wouldn't be good enough to do that stuff,
mm,
right? That's more than anything the practice. There is no, if you
you
want to write,
yeah,
you have to write.
yeah,
And so, the blog is years old at this point. Like I've lost track. I mean, I could look it up, but for 5 or 6 years, I was putting something out every single week. And that is a huge amount of writing.
yeah,
And that's practice. It was all practice. At first, I wasn't viewing it as practice, but at a certain point, it's like, hey, wait a minute. The stuff that I'm like, just the quality of my writing now is noticeably better than it was a
yeah.
year
I-
ago.
right.
Like, it was a writing exercise. And then it also wound up being a self-education exercise. Like, you read all these books by people who are a lot smarter than you are. You get better at things.
Yeah.
And yeah, without the Molten Sulfur blog, all the other things that have come in my, I think at this point I've been doing this long enough that I can say career, would not have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's it's certainly what I think of first when I think of like, yeah, Tristan, the Molten Sulfur guy, like who
Yeah.
also does these other things. Um uh oh right. Well, I mean, I, I think we might have to skip the Shanty Hunters, even though that's kind of like the next big obvious thing to talk about, because we definitely want to talk about Ballad Hunters. And how can you talk about the follow-up without talking about the original thing? So like, is there anything from making Shanty Hunters that just is absolutely vital before we talk about Ballad Hunters? Because that's the thing that we most want to talk about, because that's what's active now, and sort of the current the current project that you've been promoting, and stuff like that.
I guess what I will mention real briefly is that Shanty Hunters is a role playing game about singing and fighting magical sea shanties in the year 1880. It was very well received. People have just been consistently extraordinarily nice to me about it, which, like, I love it when people are nice to me. I'm a simple guy. Um, and I always wanted to do Ballad Hunters.
Mm,
So Ballad Hunters is a game about singing and fighting magical British folk ballads in England and Scotland in 1813. And I actually, before I like launched either of them, I did a poll, right? I polled everybody I knew who might have an interest. Should I do the shanty one or the ballad one first?
I think I
Um,
remember this poll. I think I
yeah,
remember this
yeah,
poll from back in the day.
yeah. And people were like shanties, 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 and you know, things worked out pretty well.
Yeah. Well, so I remember playing. I mean, this we're still gonna talk about Shanty Hunters, but like I remember playing Shanty Hunters when it was a Fate hack, a very long time ago. And again, like we've been friends for like 10 years, not 10 years, well maybe 10 years, I don't know. But like, so anyway, I remember playing Shanty Hunters a long time ago. But then you settled on Gumshoe, and so like now the most recent Ballad Hunters thing is like it's like the thinnest, because I got to play Ballad Hunters recently as well. You can see me, in light cosplay, being a salty old sailor. I'll put a link to that on the Rook Rasp channel.
It's
Um,
great. It's a great actual play. You should watch it.
yeah, it's real fun. We played Ballad Hunters, and a great cast of other people that came together for all the people, of the different walks of life and stuff like that are on display. But the like I've played other Gumshoe games, and I've played other, like, this is like, and this is actually relates back to, you talked about the custom system that you did for making history. Like there's almost no rules in Ballad Hunters. Like you've refined the system down to like the thinnest possible like concept of like this is going to be mitigated by random chance, like and or at least that's what it seems like to me. And I'm sure that's intentional, but like what kind of uh uh when making the follow-up, right? Like, is that something you deliberately wanted to do coming off of Shanty Hunters, or is it just a natural evolution of your game design sense now that you're not just writing for RPGs, but are actually writing RPGs? Like you found this sort of like I don't know what accounts for that sort of difference of focus there or
I am a
simplification.
big believer in the idea that RPGs should have rules for the things that they are about. And for the things that they aren't about, they should have as little in the way of rules as possible, ideally none. Because, hey, let me just reach over here. Yeah, this will do. So I have the fifth edition Dungeons and Dragons Monster Manual just sitting on the floor next to me. And, um, you know, it's stat blocks, endless stat blocks of, here are monsters for you to kill. And that's great, right? That's super fun. Um, but it sends a very specific message, which is this is a game where you kill monsters. And like, yeah, Dungeons and Dragons is a game where you kill monsters. And yes, there's so many other things that you can do with Dungeons and Dragons, but by including this profound depth of rules and all these monsters, that sends an unmistakable message to the player and to the person running it. This is what this game is about. Um, and so I wanted Ballad Hunters to have rules for the things that it was about. So it has rules for textual interpretation. It has rules for using your ballad magic. It has rules for all these things relating to ballads coming to life. And it doesn't have rules for any of the other stuff because that's not what the game's about. And if you try to use if you try to take the game and play something totally different, you're going to have a bad time. I don't want you to have a bad time with my game. I want you to
Mm.
have a lot of fun with my game. So I'm giving you what you need to have fun. And if I give you a bunch of other stuff too, then what I'm telling you is do that other stuff too. And I don't want you because you will have less fun doing that other stuff. So here are the rules for the things that is fun. Go with God.
Yeah, I mean that is such a um I think it takes a yeah, I look back on my own work. The first game that Brandon and I wrote together had like this has become my new measure of like whether or not a game is an indie game or not. There's so many ways to define that, and that's not the point of this. But like, if it is a, I wrote grapple rules. We wrote grapple rules into our first game, right? And so like and not necessarily because we expected people to like get into a fight with
But what if
that,
they do?
but what if they do? But also, like, that's what role-playing games have. They have grapple rules. And like we were determined that this time we're gonna fix the grapple rules and they'll be make so much sense, But like that's like a joke about myself because like that I was following the forms that I was used to, right? And so like I think it does take a while for a designer to like figure out what they want to play games about, what they want to do. And so like you know, uh, that's the only game that has the grapple rules is that first game that Brandon and I put out. The anthropomorphic Sky Pirates game set in 1930s Europe.
I'm thinking here of James Kerr, who has written
Mm,
multiple like martial arts role playing games.
yeah.
Since they have grappling rules, does that mean they're not indie? Oh no.
Well, I mean, again, like indie can be different things. Like, I don't know. His system of his cool paper rock scissors plus system for grapple rules is yeah it's indie but not indie also because it's about fighting and maybe it's fine if it's about fighting that you can have grapple rules but um anyway I mean I guess I should have James on here, ask him, interrogate him about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But the anyway, I mean that's neat. So like the what? Okay, so there's so much to ask you about this game. So some of the other stuff that I felt is different about it is that like it kind of surprised me, like coming from Shanty Hunters, where you've got a list of like theoretical big bads that you could use, like, oh, you've got your why do not the shanties want to be collected? Well, it's because of a trickster god, or it's because of, a personification of the ocean, or it's because of I don't think you have Cthulhu in there, but you've got some sort of like it's more of a Davy Jones thing, I guess. But
Mhm,
it's eldritch magic, or it's ancient eldritch magic of whatever. That's why the shanties aren't there. And then, but there's no organization on the player side. You're just scholars who want to collect the shanties.
mhm.
But then in Ballad Hunters, you're like you almost did the opposite, where you're like who knows what the problem is, but you are definitely sent by the royal proclamation to go do this job. And like, if anybody gives you any problems, you could just say like, "Oh, but we're here by the king's order," you know. So like, it feels like a flipping of the script, which is fine. Like, it's a different game, but like, it is what. What about the time period? It's set in a very specific year. It's set in a very specific milieu? Like what did you uncover and why did you give it this sort of like royal, commission sort of feel to Ballad Hunters, to the Ballad Hunters themselves?
I gave it that because it's something that players are comfortable with, right?
Mm.
Um, you know, everybody has seen not literally all of these, but at least one of the X-Files, Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Actually, some of those are terrible examples. Everybody has seen. I just went into my Monster of the Week list there, which, by the way, is
What?
an amazing game. If you somehow don't know that Monster of the Week is
Oh,
an amazing
yeah,
game.
Monster of the Week. Right, but
But
like Buffy has the Watchers, and also so does Highlander. Highlander also has Watchers,
yeah,
and
yeah,
like
like
there's a organization that is
everybody
out there.
everybody has watched a movie or TV show or read a book where it's, oh, I've been sent here by organization and that gives me some authority, that gives me some structure. Um and and so players get it, right? Players get it instantly, right? They don't, oh, okay, oh, so it's like Delta Green. Like, yeah,
Mm.
sure, it's like Delta Green, right? You have been sent by the government and there is something weird, and the weird thing is your problem. um and the much about Ballad Hunters is weird, right? It's much about it is different from what a lot of players are accustomed to. This is a game where ballads are coming to life and causing serious harm to people, right? The people in the area where the ballad has come to life, they take on roles from the ballad. Oh, this character in the ballad did this thing, and now being supernaturally, I, the NPC, am being supernaturally compelled to do the things in real life that the ballad character did in the song. And oh, it's always the tragedies that come to life. It's never the happy songs. So that's
Are
really
there happy
bad,
songs?
and the players need to get everyone through the song alive, intact as best they are able. And your best tool for doing that is textual analysis of the lyrics of the song, right? You have a handout in front of you with the lyrics of the song. Ideally, hopefully, you and your group have sung the song together around the table, because by God, if you're getting together with friends to play a game, an adventure about a specific song, like sing the song with your friends. It's great. You should do it. It's so much fun. But like, cool, dig into the lyrics, figure out what's going to happen in the game before it happens, because you have all the clues you need right in front of you. It's the lyrics of the song.
Mm.
And okay, who's doing what is, and that the idea of sitting down for a game of textual analysis. And I know I've used that phrase multiple times today, but like somebody once told me, "Oh, Ballad Hunters, it's textual analysis, the role-playing game." And I haven't been able to shake it because it's a really accurate summation. And that's weird, right? That's different from what people are
Yeah,
expecting.
yeah, yeah.
So a lot of my game design process going into Ballad Hunters has been, how do I take as much cognitive load off the players about other stuff so that they can focus their
Mm,
cognitive load on this unfamiliar experience of role playing game, but textual analysis. And one of the ways that you do that is, instead of being like, well, I don't know, you guys are just kind of a bunch of amateur folklorists, sea people. I don't know, figure it out. Like, why did you tell me why do you all like and respect each other?
yeah.
Like, just take that off the table. You don't have to figure that out. Instead, it's you're all working for Walter Scott. He is the government's point man on this ballad crisis. We can talk about why Walter Scott picked you, like you're all amateur folklorists, but we can talk about, why did Walter Scott pick you? Why do you have the authority of the crown? And the manuscript has a bunch of like template party, the party templates, I guess. Walter Scott saved us all from the gallows, and that's why we have to do what he says, right? It's Suicide Squad,
Right, right,
or
right. We all have bombs
oh,
in our
we're
neck.
we're Walter Scott's publishing house. He knows that we're the people who know about ballads. But the central conceit is not something you have to figure out. It's something you already understand. Go in and dive into it. And there's a lot of things in the game design that are like that, that are, hey, I've iterated this on this over and over and over and over again through playtesting
Hmm.
until we get to the point where people don't, where I present the game to a new group of people and they sit down to play it and we're playing it and I don't get questions, right?
Mm,
Because everybody's just understanding what's happening. Nobody has to ask a bunch of questions. And it's not like, oh, I don't want you to ask questions. Like, no, it's just, I want you to automatically get it
yeah,
so that when you're doing the different thing, that's all your spoons, right? That's what you're putting
yeah,
all your
yeah.
spoons into.
That's such an interesting approach. I don't know if I've heard someone describe it in doing exactly that before. So congrats, because I think you've hit on something here. Um, uh, did one of the other things that I think is innovative here is, or not, at least comparative to Shanty Hunters, and so I'm going to ask about playtesting and like did this come out of this? You've got this um you the compass phrase, the compass verse that each of the characters has in it. So like you've got the textual interpretation of the song that is the question of the episode or of the campaign, not the campaign, the session. But then everybody's got these little phrases that are musical phrases from other places that they've learned, or and they carry a little bit of that uh, you know, the power in the words kind of thing that come with them from somewhere else, right? That's not part of the song, but they get to add it anyway. It's like their special ability as a player, right? Or as a character, right? To add to the extra stuff of the thing. So, um, did that come out of playtesting too, or was that sort of like,
That
again, to push all the unnecessary pieces off the table and just leave the good bits? Where did that little part come from?
that did come from playtesting, and I love this story. So this came from playtesting, not Ballad Hunters, but Shanty Hunters,
Ah,
where I was running a playtest campaign for a bunch of my friends, and one of them, someone who is in my regular gaming group and with whom I have been gaming for almost 20 years, a dear and beloved friend. We're in this situation, and oh, these things are happening in the sea shanty, and oh, she's in a lot of trouble, right? She's in serious peril. She has done this thing that has saved a lot of lives, but now she's in serious trouble. And she points to something in the sea shanty that has come to life, a particular verse. And she says, boy, if this verse were to come to life again, it would really save my ass here, Tristan. We have decided that my character is some sort of sea witch, and we've left it really nebulous. Like, what does that mean? Can I make this verse come to life again? And I say, wow, what an amazing idea. Oh, this is so cool. Like, oh, let's see how this goes. And so we do it. And it's amazing, right? It's just this wonderful table experience. And at this point, Shanty Hunters is too far along in the design and playtesting process for me to take this wonderful idea and like bolt it in as a core part of the system. But I say, by golly, when I do the next game, I'm going to make this a core part of the system. So I built Ballad Hunters from the ground up to have this idea
Mm.
where every player at the table has a single verse from some other ballad, not the one that's coming to life, with some really colorful imagery in it. And once per adventure for free, you can make your verse come to life. And it winds up playing like everybody's playing this, investigative role-playing game. And then, but at any point, somebody can bust out a prompt from a story game, right? A story game like For the Queen. Just like, hey, here's this thing, and that's open to my interpretation, and here's how I interpret it, and here's how I interpret this solving a problem that we're currently facing. And just like have a giant impact on the adventure, and it's super fun. The game comes with a table of 100 compass verses. At the start of each session, you roll on the table to see which compass verse you get, so that you've always got something fresh. You're never like, oh, this old chestnut again. um, and this player, her name's Kelly. She has no recollection of this incident, right? This was like a mind-blowing thing, profoundly changed the course of the game design. For Kelly, it was Tuesday, right? It was just
Yeah,
another like, oh, I'm Kelly. Of course I had a good idea. Um, so just
nice,
amazing.
nice. Uh, well, we have chatted for a little while, and we still want to get to the Mule Train of Panama. So I'm going to we're going to wrap up with two quick questions here
Okay.
about Ballad Hunters. One is, is there anything else you absolutely have to tell us about Ballad Hunters other than that, like, should be on crowdfunding now or soon, depending on when you watch this video? Uh, what anything else you have to finish up that you just have to tell us about Ballad Hunters?
The thing that I will say, because of where we're having this conversation, and anybody who's tuned in has probably listened to other Tristan Zimmerman is on other Inc. Shows. Um, so I mentioned the game is set in 1813 England and Scotland. This is the Regency era. This is kind of Jane Austen times. This is Napoleonic War times. Um, it's I definitely did my homework. I definitely did my research, and it's a very different version of the Regency than what you may be accustomed to. And I'm really proud of that. I had a lot of fun
Mm.
with it. The Regency as popularly portrayed, right? We get it through Jane Austen, right? That is, for this period, that is most people's conception. They see it through the lens of like, oh, I saw Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley in it, and it was fabulous. And that's what this era looks like. Well, of course, to the vast majority in England and Scotland during this period, it did not look like that. Most people did not have, oh, yes, here's my fleet of servants and, my giant house. Most people were dirt poor, and it was actually a really bad time. This was a period when rents were going through the roof. People whose families had been renting a
This
particular
is
parcel of land for generations
this
were
is
being
the after the enclosures, right?
so it is after the enclosures. The big thing that is happening here for like throwing people off their land is sheep. There is a new kind of sheep that has been bred that is so much cheaper and easier to raise. And so you as a landlord, whether you're a member of the gentry, like the protagonists in Jane Austen novels, or whether you're, a peer that is, a lord or a duke or whatever, um, you can make so much more money putting sheep on your land than you can renting your land out to a farmer who will farm it and pay you rent. So rents are just going sky high as a consequence, and people are getting thrown off the land that they have rented for generations. They're going into the slums. Meanwhile, mechanization is happening. The first industrial revolution is occurring in Britain. People who have long had good jobs in textile manufacturing are losing their jobs to these new power looms and other mechanical devices. Um, and these jobs are not being replaced. There's no new jobs coming along to replace them. So it's just good luck with starving. I hope you enjoy the process of starving. People are rising up in what's called the Luddite revolts, which are these astonishing acts of popular resistance, where people are burning down factories, they're smashing the machines that are destroying their jobs. It's this enormously powerful moment that has no consequences because the Luddite revolts are huge. They're nationwide. Troops are pulled back from Europe where they are fighting against Napoleon, right, to put down the Luddite risings. This is a huge deal, and it has no impact on the course of the Industrial Revolution. It goes nowhere, which is terrifying. Um,
Yeah,
and
there's no relevance at all to what you're talking about to the modern day. None.
right, like rents going through the roof, jobs being destroyed by automation, people feeling powerless. Like I did not intend any of this when I sat down to write this game, but boy, history had a way of,
All games are autobiographical,
I
Tristan.
guess maybe. And yeah, so it's just and because it is a game about the art of ordinary working people, right? These ballads are songs by and for ordinary working people. This means the game is about them, is about us.
Hmm.
And so it's a very different version of the Regency from what folks at home may be accustomed to.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, well, that's an invitation to play. Go back it now or follow it, whatever, yeah, whatever, wherever its stage it is, that it's crowdfunding right now. When you see this, go check it out. There will be a link. Uh, all right, so I don't want to spend very much time on all of this, but I do want to throw it out there. Third version, like playlist games are hot right now. Are you going to do like the 80s soundtrack version of this as the third Hunters game? You don't have to even answer. I'm just gonna throw it out there. It's there, possibly the 70s, 80s, 90s soundtrack version. Put your playlist together, hunt those songs.
A friend
Nope.
of mine has hacked the game into a form she calls Power Ballad Hunters. I
Uh-huh.
still have yet to
Uh-huh.
play it. It sounds super duper cool. I am terrified of opening that Pandora's box to see what licensing issues might be inside.
Oh, yeah.
But
Well, you can't reprint the lyrics of the songs, perhaps, the way you have with the other ones. But like, oh, the people, that's the thing. You put that off on the players. The players make their own playlist. You just give them the tools to do it. Anyway, maybe we'll see that in the future. Okay. Tristan, I love it. I've had so much fun, but we do want to talk about the Panama Mule Train.
we do want to
Uh,
talk about these pirates.
yeah, so like you say Pirates of the Panama Mule Train, and I'm definitely thinking of, the very popular movie series, and the sort of pop culture version of Pirates. But like I reread the blog post today and I'm like, these guys did not look like Johnny Depp. This is something else is happening with these pirates. I mean, so tell us all about it. Tell us about the Panama Mule Train. This is
Yeah.
this if you're watching this for whatever reason you don't know what Tristan is usually here to talk about, we're about to do what Tristan's usually here to do. So one story from the blog, Tristan's going to talk us through it.
Yeah. So we're this particular conversation is set in the 1500s, in the Isthmus of Panama. So that is in the modern nation state of Panama, the narrowest part of the Americas, where the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean are very close to each other, but they don't touch, because if they touched, there wouldn't be an isthmus.
That's
Today, that's where the Panama Canal is, connecting those two fine oceans. Um, I say as if, some oceans are better than others. Um,
you're just complimentary of all oceans.
I do like oceans. I'm a big fan. I've never visited two of them. Um, so the Arctic and the Southern, I have not visited. Maybe
Yeah.
someday. Um, the anyway, so Spain, right? Spain is on this giant kick of conquest, right? Spain is in 1531. Spain launches a campaign to subjugate the Inca Empire, which is in Western South America. This generates enormous revenue, right? First, from just straight up plunder, right? From just straight up killing people, taking their stuff, enslaving them. Slavery is big business, like
I will
just
draw
straight
a
up.
line on the wall and you pile the treasure until it reaches this line. Like that's
Hmm.
or I will kill you.
Or I will
That's
kill
how
you and
it
everyone you've
went
ever
down.
met. Um, so anyway, that's the first way that it generates untold revenue. And then it's generating untold revenue from taxes and trade and mining. In
Mining.
Bolivia, there is a mountain, the Cerro Rico, in Potosi. I'm gonna wildly deviate in how much Spanish accent I put on different words in this. But there's a mountain of silver, right? Like a mountain, literally, it is a mountain and it is made of silver. And so the amount of silver that is flowing out of what is today Bolivia is immense, and there's making so much money at the expense of so much human misery. And how do you get that money back to Spain? Because it's on the wrong side of South America. It's on the west side of South America. Um, so a couple of options. It has to go by boat, right? Spain is on another continent, so there has to be boats involved. Option one, you could put it on a ship and sail it south around the southern tip of South America. I don't know which way to point my finger because I'm not sure how this is going to get reversed on YouTube, but you sail it south around the southern tip of South America, and then you sail around east around the southern tip of South America, what's called Cape Horn, and then you just sail across the Atlantic, northeast across the Atlantic to Spain. It's more complicated than that, but whatever. The problem is Cape Horn is terrible. It has some of the worst weather in the world. Cape Horn is a nightmare to sail around. And ships in the 1500s are primitive and they are fragile. They're little eggshells on the ocean. And sailing a ship around Cape Horn, it's not a death sentence. People do it, they do it successfully, but you're going to lose a lot of ships. And if all those ships are laden down with expensive things, the loss of one ship is a terrible expense. So people are doing it, but you really don't want to. Okay, option second. You could sail west from South America. You could sail west across the Pacific. And actually, Spain controls the Philippines during this period. So you can sail to the Philippines on the other side of the Pacific, and then you can keep sailing west and sail through the Indian Ocean and sail south around Africa and then up to Europe. This has
Seems
several
like such a
downsides.
terrible long way to go, but
It's
like
so
at,
long, and
at
ships of this
least
era are so slow.
least you don't have to go around the southern tip of South America, though.
Yeah. And also the seas that you are traveling through are so full of enemies of Spain. The Portuguese are really big in the Indian Ocean in the 1500s. The Ottoman Empire is huge in the Indian Ocean in the 1500s. You've got the Malabar pirates. You've got all sorts of statelets and pirates and also like the Indian Ocean is an incredible like I would love to write a game at some point set in the Indian Ocean. It would be amazing. But anyway, that's a bad plan. Like, don't do that plan. So, what does that leave you with? Take your stuff, put it on some mules, and have the mules walk to the Atlantic Ocean, and then just put it on a ship on the Atlantic side and sail it to Spain. Cool. Where are you going to do that? Well, a logical place to do it is where the continent is thinnest. So the mules have to travel the shortest distance. Panama. And so in 1525, before even an attempt had begun to conquer to attack the Inca Empire, Spain, which has towns on either side of the Isthmus of Panama, on the west side you have Panama City, what is today Panama City. At the time it was just called Panama. Today also just called Panama. Anyway, Panama City on the west side. On the east, you have Nombre de Dios, which is later replaced by the town of Portobello. And just, hey, we've already got like a dirt road. Let's pave it. In 1525 is when they make this decision. Um, the problem is that there are some steep mountains in the Isthmus of Panama. This is not like, we'll just wander across steep mountains, deep, dense, dangerous rainforest, like bad place to be a mule, bad place to build a road. Um, and so and it's going to take a huge amount of labor to do it. And Spain doesn't have huge amounts of Spanish labor willing to do this awful, awful job. So that labor is going to have to be purchased in the form of enslaved laborers. So from 15, the work starts in 1526, it concludes in 1540. So that is 14 years later, 14 years of work. The work is done primarily by enslaved Nicaraguan prisoners. The Spanish government purchases these prisoners from two kingdoms in Nicaragua. Um, and these this of course then incentivizes the Nicaraguan kings to find lots of excuses to imprison people, right, so that they can then turn them around and sell them. Over the course of those 14 years, an estimated 100,000 Nicaraguans are sent to Panama. For context, in 1548, Spain does a survey in Panama and estimates that there's about 60,000 people in Panama after the depopulation. So 100,000 people were moved, 60,000 people remain at the end. These enslaved prisoners are cheap. And so what makes the most sense is work them to death and then replace them. It is an awful, awful system. And what you get at the end of this is this road that is paved, right? It's paved in cobblestones. In some places, it's a fine road. It's like 8 feet wide. It's on top of this big causeway. It's great. In some places, it's like 3 feet wide, and on the edge of the road is a 500-foot drop off the side of a mountain. In some places, it's incredibly steep. It's so steep that that you have to go on hands and feet to climb up the side of the mountain where this road is going up the mountain. Even the mules are struggling to make it up the rain slick stones because it's a rainforest, right? So of course the cobblestones are wet, they're slippery, um, and there is incredible amounts of wealth that is being transported in these huge mule trains from the Pacific to the Atlantic through this awful, dangerous road. And this naturally attracts attention. But before we talk about the pirates, I will mention, I'm not even actually at this point, I haven't mentioned a second road that exists that goes in a different way, that floats, that winds up taking advantage of a river. So you go west across the Continental Divide, and then technically, it's not west. Doesn't matter. You're going from the Pacific to the Atlantic across the Continental Divide. And once you cross the mountains, there's a river and you can put your stuff on barges and float it down the river. That's actually very dangerous because pirates can sail right up the river. But let's talk about the people with the mules because your kind of average mule train carrying all this money consists of about 1,200 mules. And each
That's a
mule
lot of mules.
has a lot of mules. Also, interestingly, all the mules have to be imported because for whatever reason, like donkeys and horses don't want to have sex in Panama. I don't understand why. Like it's just not conducive to raising mules for some reason. So all the mules have to be imported, which is weird. Anyway, all these mules require a handler.
But
Um,
but all the mules have to be imported, but you still don't have to go around the Cape of Horn. So like
Still don't
it's
have to go
like
around Cape
this is the
Horn.
least worst option,
Um,
even as terrible as it is.
um, so each of these mules needs a handler. It's not like there suddenly has become a great surplus of free labor in Panama. So all these handlers are enslaved. By this point, by the time the road is finished, the most enslaved people in Panama are no longer indigenous; they're now African for a number of reasons. One of which is the significant depopulation of the area. There's just a lot fewer people to snatch and force into slavery. And also, there are now greater legal protections in the Spanish Empire for indigenous people, but not for Africans. So you're importing huge numbers of Africans to Panama in slavery to, walk alongside the mule and make sure that the mule doesn't bolt or do anything silly. Well, you'll be shocked to learn that these people don't like doing that. And so a lot of them escape because there is dense, dense, dense jungle all through here. You can just leave.
Yeah,
What are they going to do? Like
right.
go into the rainforest to find you? Good luck.
You
Um,
you can't have like if you've got 1,200 mules, that means you have 1,200 handlers. It's like you can't have enough people guarding 1,200 people because you don't have any people. If you had that many people, they'd be riding the mules themselves. Like
yeah,
it's
and they're
like.
they're all strung out. It's not like, oh,
Yeah.
well, it's just a big group of people or whatever. Like, nope, they're all strung out in a long, long, long line through the mountains. So yeah, people kind of, you look around like, oh, I think I'm out of eyesight of the nearest guy with a gun, or maybe I'm not, but I'm just going to take my chances. Like, see ya, bolt into the rainforest, and start a new life. And so you have communities of self-emancipated people in the rainforest in Panama. The term for such people is maroons. Maroons are really important in Caribbean history. Jamaica, in particular, is has a strong history of maroonage or mahonage, that is really important in Jamaican history, and is really really cool. So you've got these communities living in the rainforest. Many of them fortify their communities. They're kind of building little castles in the rainforest because, hey, the Spanish could come at any time and try to grab us and force us back into slavery, and we're not going to take that line down, no sir. Um, and so you've got essentially they are freedom fighters, right? Maroons are freedom fighters, and so you've got freedom fighters living in the rainforest. Um, and I think that's amazing. That's just beyond cool. And now we get to the pirates because you've got all this money flowing across the isthmus. Of course pirates are going to target that. Of course you're going to have freebooters who are just like, I heard there was a bunch of money over there. Like, let's go get it.
Right.
Um, and of course the pirates wind up teaming up with the Maroons to work together. They certainly have a common enemy. And your kind of your most prominent moment of this was 1572 to 1573, when Captain Francis Drake, he's not yet Sir Francis Drake, but the noted English pirate. This is where somebody in the comments can be like, he was a privateer. Privateers are pirates. Get over it. It's a subcategory of the larger concept. Um, uh, Francis Drake shows up. He's like, I'm going to raid this. And he sends overtures to a Maroon chief by the name of Pedro Mandinga, and Drake and Mendinga team up to attack the Atlantic coast town of Nombre de Dios. And the attack is repelled. They don't succeed. But Drake and Mendinga are not going to throw in the towel so easily. So uh, 30 Maroons and 20 pirates, led by Mandinga and Drake, then cross the isthmus on foot. They're not using the road because then people would know what they were doing, right? They're going through the rainforest to the Pacific side, and um there where the Spanish are not expecting this. They're not expecting to get suddenly hit from the forest on the Pacific side of the isthmus. They attack a mule train. Great success. The mule train wasn't carrying money. It was carrying supplies. It was carrying supplies that were going from Panama City to Nombre de Dios. So they successfully attacked the mule train, and they don't get any money for it. And now the Spanish on the Pacific side know that there is a major raiding party in the woods, and so the raiding party has to flee, and they flee back to the Caribbean coast, right back to the Atlantic side, and there they encounter more pirates. These pirates are it's a French Huguenot crew led by Captain Guillaume Le Testu. And they all team up for a three-way attack on a different mule train. This attack is successful. It is carrying money. It is carrying silver. They get away with a huge amount of silver. They take losses in the course of the attack. Captain Guillaume Le Testu is killed in the attack. They're fleeing through the jungle, trying to make it back to a point of safety. They're too slow because they're carrying all this heavy silver.
Yeah.
And so they have to bury the silver on the banks of a river. There's not a lot of instant, like, buried treasure is this like pirate trope. There are some instances where it was a real thing, not very many, but by God, this is one of them. So, that's amazing right there. They bury most of their silver. They get back to a place of safety. They divvy up the remaining silver amongst themselves. Drake gives Mandinga Testu's sword as like a gesture of goodwill, which is neat. Also, that sword was originally owned by Francis I, the King of France, so neat. Um, And Drake sails away with what booty he managed to recover. The Spanish, meanwhile, are convinced that Drake has not sailed away. This is just a ruse, right? Like, oh, actually, those English dogs are holed up somewhere in a maroon castle, and ooh, we're gonna get them. Yeah. Anyway, um, this is amazing, right? This is
Yeah.
beyond gameable. This is
I mean,
so
this
gameable.
is the thing. This is the thing. You always find these things that are just there's seven. I mean, not seven. I'm exaggerating slightly. There's like five factions, four factions, at least. There's dangerous terrain, there's hostile environments, there's 100 different motivations possible from different nationalities and different like locations and different things like this is the magic of the things that you find where it's just like there's too much. You can't do all of this. Like put your players anywhere in this environment and like they're gonna brush up against like plots and counter plots and like whatever. It's wild. I do have one question that you may not know the answer to before we talk about more of the game stuff, but it's like, were these I don't know enough about like what the process was. I assume this was not like you're talking about the tropes of treasure and stuff like that. I assume this was like silver that had been processed into bars but had not yet been minted into coins. So it probably has some sort of royal stamps on it, but probably isn't in the form of money yet, I would
That
guess.
that is a good question. I don't know. Um, I don't know whether this was ingot silver or coined silver. I think by this period there was a mint in Lima. Surely there had to have been a mint in Potosi. I don't know. I yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Okay. Okay. Because, it's like the running off with a bunch of silver that you can do whatever you want with is in some ways better, but also like you can't also spend it. Like you can capture it's a raw material at that point.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you
it's
can't
something you
like
then have to sell as
right, you
opposed to
can't just
spend.
spend it as itself because it's not yet coins. But it changes things slightly, but like it doesn't matter a huge amount. So what are your favorite like points of entry for game play into this very dynamic roiling kettle of tensions and plot hooks?
So the place where I would start is as a so obviously you're going to file the serial numbers off this. The intention is you file the serial numbers off this, you drop this into the fictional campaign that you're already running, not that like, oh, coincidentally you're already running a campaign set in the 1500s, like unlikely.
Yeah.
Um but you've got, to fictionalize it, what you at heart need is an isthmus with some terrible terrain and kind of a castle at each end. Um and and a reason why all the money has to flow across the
Yeah.
isthmus,
I
right?
mean, it's a place where it's a neutrino free corridor of a nebula, or
Exactly.
it's a
Yeah.
mountain valley. It's the only pass over this part of the you know mountains of Venus or whatever.
Yep.
It's some the narrow path with many exits and on ramps is the part to preserve.
Yeah. But where there are people flowing, information is flowing, right?
Mm.
So in real history, Panama and then Nombre de Dios and Portobello after it, were rumor mills, right? If you want to know what's going on the other side of the world, you're the place where you're going to get the most immediate answer is going to be the castle at either end of the road, because everybody's funneled into it. Everybody who's coming from the direction where the thing has happened that you want to know about is being funneled in there. And so imagine the gossip that was being shared in the equivalent of taverns and boardrooms in Portobello. I mean, that's where I would start, right? Is the players need to learn something. So, hey, your best bet is going to be to schmooze some people in, your fictional Portobello analog. Um, and what I like about that is the players are always going to need some piece of information about something, so you can always just funnel them there. And then once they're there, then it's like, hey, you notice all this money streaming through. And if you're playing the sort of game where your party is, really financially motivated, um, then boom, that's your hook right there. You don't need to go further. Like there's all this money flowing through in awful terrain, like ambush, ambush, ambush. Do the ambush, buddy. And then, hey, but you're in the jungle. That's when you encounter the Maroons or whatever your version of freedom fighters are, but use Maroons because Maroons are amazing and underutilized. Um, that's where you encounter the pirates. Now you're involved in like three-way politics among Maroons, pirates, and you. It's all great. Um, or the party just needs to transit, right? You need to get to the other side of the neutrino field, so you've got to go along. And hey, here you are walking along the road, doop, 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 doop. You're with this mule train, and the mule train falls under attack. What do you do, right? Like, hey, this mule train, you know, why would we defend this mule train? We don't have a dog in this fight. Or maybe you do have a dog in this fight. Maybe, you're on the side of the people who run the road and like, oh, we got to defend the road. But ideally, you'd be like, hey, who are those people? Oh, they're freedom fighters, you say. Freedom fighters are pretty cool. Like, hey, what if we help the freedom fighters, right? There's lots of avenues. Once you have presented this complicated, messy powder keg of a situation, I feel like adventure just kind of flows naturally from the decisions that the players make.
Right, right. There's always like another, I mean, any sort of plot, like, I mean, I read adventures written for like Dragon games or whatever, and like the, you know, there, there are a lot of like point A to point B kind of situations, right? I mean, you don't usually create a situation this messy. So like to take that thread of a thing like you say that you've already running and you lay it across this map of Panama that is already so messy. It's like then you kind of just anything can happen, right? Like rather than just like sort of like well, you can't join with the Maroons because that's not in this adventure, like there's no option for that. That's not a named character. It's like, but you could make it a named character,
Yeah, and
you
that's the
could,
wonderful thing about messy situations like this is, if the players, encounter Maroons and they're just like, yeah, that was fine, that was whatever, like, cool, Maroons will never show up again. But if they encounter Maroons and they're like, oh my God, freedom fighters who freed themselves from slavery and now are fighting the man, like, hell yeah, like, cool. Well, let me tell you, they've got these like secret rainforest mountain
yeah.
fortresses, and okay, well, now I get to introduce some NPCs, I get to introduce some locations, and like, if they're not interested, you don't flush it out. And in fact, if they're not interested, oh, well, maybe there was only ever one Maroon band and you encountered that Maroon band, and that's that, right? And then if you are interested, then, oh, great. Well, now I get to flesh out this whole thing and we get to have all these adventures, and like, yeah, you don't do the work until it's needed. Once you
Mm,
know the work is needed, now you prepare the adventures, now you prepare the NPCs, now you prepare the adventure sites and the ambushes and the so forth. But but leave all that work undone until you know that what exactly the players are going to get excited about. And
yeah.
then make adventures about the thing they're excited about.
Was the French, it wasn't Guillaume, was it Guillaume?
Guillaume,
Guillaume?
Guillaume Le Testu.
Yeah. So if you're like, that's like your equivalent in your situation is like, seems like almost potentially one of those things where like, oh yeah, and there's like a fancy French pirate and like this is his fancy French name and people are like, oh gosh, we love him. Now we want to make him our friend. And like then you have to do the accent that you didn't think you had to do more than saying his name once, because now they love that guy. Or it's a goblin. Like that's a classic like
Yes.
goblin with a dumb name is now your most stalwart ally because the party just will always want him on their side. Yeah, so it, lots of stuff to play with in this situation. Uh, All right, Tristan, is there anything else to finish up about the mule train here story?
I guess
Any other details you want to present?
I guess I will mention briefly here at the end why the mule train like stopped being a
Mm,
thing. Which is a, of course, we already mentioned the expense, right? You have to bring in the mules from outside. You have to bring in enslaved labor from outside. This all brings up cost. But because it was such a small and concentrated area, um, all of the merchants, all of the rich people who ran the mule trains, the slavers and so forth, they all knew each other very well, and so they eventually were able to form a cartel. Where they all coordinated, like, okay, well, this is how much we're gonna charge, and cartels drive up prices, and so the price of sending stuff through Panama just kept going up and up and up and up until by around 1700 it wasn't a thing anymore, right? It was too expensive to use. Nobody used it. The It was by the end of this road, um, it was 47 times more expensive per pound of stuff transported to use the road through Panama than it was to go from ocean to ocean in Mexico between Acapulco and Veracruz, which is so much longer, right? Like that's such a longer trip going from Acapulco to Veracruz than going across Panama, but 47 times more expensive to go through Panama than Acapulco to Veracruz. It was
mm,
even cheaper rather than go through Panama to take your stuff that you got in Bolivia or Peru or wherever, to go over the Andes Mountains to Tucumán in what is today Argentina, and then float down the river to Buenos Aires, which, literally it was cheaper to go over the Andes Mountains than it was to use this, short little shortcut in Panama. So, the guys who ran it, who are the villains of this story, did manage to boil the goose that laid their golden eggs.
mm. Well, good for them, I guess. Tristan, if people want to hear more about cool things from history that they can put into their games, if they want to follow what you do in games in the internet, where are you to be found around these interwebs which we inhabit?
So you can find me at moltensulfur.com for more stuff like this. On Blue Sky and on Blue Sky, I'm at Molten Sulfur. On Mastodon, I am at Molten Sulfur or I guess Molten Sulfur at dice.camp. And you should check out Ballad Hunters on Kickstarter. Tell your friends.
Yeah. Again, links to all of those things will be in the description of this video. Tristan, thank you so much for coming on once again to talk about this. Doing a little bit different format, getting to interview you was a joy and a delight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Uh, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you again in sometime later this year, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Just always a delight to be here, my dude.
Take care. And I want to thank everybody for watching this video. I had a good question I thought of earlier, but I can't think of it now, so I don't know. Yeah, how about this? Like yes or no to the list off hunters, the playlist hunters. Just yes or no. Should that happen? Let Tristan know in the comments.
Yes,
Thank you so
let me
much.
know.